Welcome to How to Eat Chocolate. My name's Ronald Hughes, and I'll be taking you through this short and charming, yet scintillating sales training course that'll last just but a few minutes. Starting off with the fact that we're going to cover 3 different types of selling throughout, and we'll cover that a little bit back later on in this course here. But what do you need to know to start with? It's where we're really going to work from. First and foremost, understanding that you're going to be looking at sales as a concept that has been developed over the last couple of 100 years and trying to understand how it all works and comes together for us. First and foremost, though, we start out with the name game. In the beginning of our conversations, we introduce ourselves. It's important that we actually understand that the person that we're communicating with has a name. What's important is how I use that name, and make sure that I'm using the correct name for the person. Usually people indicate how they wish to be addressed by the way they answer your telephone call or your introduction. I'll usually say, good morning, Mr. Jones, or good morning, may I speak to Bob Jones, please. The response I get to this is either going to be, this is Bob or this is Mr. Jones, and based upon that response, I decide what I'm going to call someone. Second, it's the initial interest statement, and it's probably important that everybody understands from the very onset of the conversation that at the beginning you've got to have a hook to get somebody interested in talking to you. Probably the area that most people make the biggest mistakes in is not having a hook. You ever had somebody say that they're not interested? The reason they're not interested is because you didn't tell them why they should be interested. The next level that we're going to look at is signposting. Signposting in a call communication with somebody is about explaining to them where you're going to end up, where this conversation is going to go, and how it's going to progress. And most of us don't want to go into a conversation with somebody that we have no idea as to what it's going to happen in it. Signposting is ultimately important if you're going to carry out communications that are favorable with people. I always hate to hear a salesperson say something like, it's only going to be a couple of minutes. Please, it's like very short call. I'm not going to spend too long with you or anything like that. That's not a correct signpost. The signpost is expressing where you're going to go, how it's going to progress, and where you're going to end up in the end. The next stage that we're going to actually get to is the questioning. Questioning is ultimately an important situation for all good salespeople. Good questions make good salespeople, as I say. And when it comes down to it, keeping the questions open at the beginning of the conversation always helps you to build towards a better sale. Open questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. A probe is a question that's based upon an answer to a previous question, and going deeper into the answer to get clear details as to exactly what the customer meant when they were saying the things they said. Questions don't come in just one type. We've got open questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, but we've got closed questions. May, might, must, can, could, shall, should, will, would. All those things are going to narrow down a conversation to a possible yes, no, or specific answer. And those type of closed questions lead us toward ending or finishing the conversation. We got alternatives, which are which, and then leading questions. Tell me a little bit more about double barrel. It would be, can you tell me? The issue is that the purpose of all those questions is to identify the customer's needs. If you've identified the customer's needs correctly, then it's time for you to finally do the selling. And the selling is about showing the customer how your product or service benefits them. Most salespeople get it wrong. Most salespeople present features. Features describe the product or service. A benefit describes how that product features affect that customer's needs, which you must have discovered during your questioning stage. No questions, then you're never going to get a benefit. And no benefits, no sale. I think it's always a good idea to talk to people about who you're buying from when it comes to selling at this point in the conversation. What I would do if I were you is a suggestion that I would make if I was in an empathetic situation with somebody where we're getting on okay. What I think you should do is in a position where I have authority and the customer recognizes me as the man in the white coat. What you should do happens when the customer definitely knows that I am the person who is telling them what to do because I have total authority, and what we should do happens when we have really good rapport. It's important you should always look at the who you are in the conversation. The easiest part of selling is closing. Yet, for some people, they just don't get it right. They find it very difficult, mainly because of the fact that they haven't done the preparatory work. They didn't match up the customer's needs. They haven't actually gone through the clear question and identification of the customer's position, and they get to the close and they get nervous. Closing is just simply asking the customer for approval of your suggestion. You're asking them whether or not they're going to buy. They can simply say no. The issue is that if they say no, you're going to go into something called objection handling, and most salespeople are focusing themselves on closing and objections, and it's a terrible way to go. I don't like to spend a lot of time on it, but closing needs a little bit of time. There are 3 different types of closes that are most appropriate. Alternative, which is to give you a choice between 2 different things and see if you want to buy either one of those. Assumptive, which is to go on as though you already said yes all the way through the conversation and fill out the paperwork as though you heard the customer saying yes all along until the very end, when the customer either signs it or doesn't, based on an assumptive sale, or a direct, will you buy my product today? Look, if you spend too much time worrying about the close, you haven't done the business that you're supposed to do in the very beginning about opening the questions up, identifying the customer's needs. They used to call it after sale in my day, but I call it the rites of closure. You got to let the customer know what's happening next. Let them know what you'll do if it doesn't happen. Let them know what's going on there from that point on. Make sure you cover all the paperwork and based on the materials, and you cleared up any misconceptions that may go on. I'm not going to talk to you about objections because objections don't happen in a good sale. They only happen in really piss poor sales. So remember, make sure to go through all of the steps of the sale right up to the very end. The back end, which is agreeing that the sale has been made. Don't forget to recap. Dot the I's, cross the T's, check the address. The more times I've screwed up by not checking the address and sending out materials to the wrong place over the years, I would have thought I would learn eventually, but I never really did. So, check the things that you know you're going to do and make sure you don't do them over and over again. It's called learning. I personally believe that at every conversation you have with someone, you've got to thank them. You got to thank them for picking up the phone. You got to thank them for calling you. You got to thank them for speaking with you. You got to thank them for bringing something nasty to your attention. You got to thank them for having a pleasant conversation when you have it. If you have in your mind's eye that you're going to be able to thank your customer at the back end of the conversation, that you're working towards that thank you, that you're setting yourself up for the appreciation that you wish to give to your customer at the back end of the conversation, you're going to have much better conversations. Make sure you're always looking for that. Thanks for being so nice about this is when I screwed up. So make sure that you're always planning to have some way of thanking your customer. Expedite the learning. Okay, every time you have conversation with the customer, you've got to be aware that what you do with your customer, the information that they give you, is pertinent to your organization and it's improving its processes. So first off, when a customer gives you bad news or gives you any sort of positive or negative feedback, you got to have a way of taking that information into your organization. Secondly, you've got to remember that information being provided by the customer is about you as well, and you got to take that information on and learn from it. Expediting the learning is where you can force an improvement from yourself that's going to give you some real big paybacks on the end of the day. That's where you get the big money. When do most conversations go wrong? Well, most conversations go wrong in the minutes, hours, days, weeks, months leading up to that conversation. They go wrong before they actually start. And the reason why they go wrong is because somewhere, some point along the line in a previous experience, the customer was dealt with improperly by either a salesperson or a customer service person within an organization. A customer lost is hard to regain. Most of the time, most conversations go wrong because something has failed afterwards. Make sure that you cover all the bases. Make sure that everything's in place, and then you need to obtain closure before you move on to your next conversation. If you've just had a really tough time with a customer, don't jump into another conversation with it because you're not prepared, and neither is your customer going to be prepared for you and the type of attitude that you'll bring to that conversation. Best of luck to you now. Thank you very much for coming along. We'll see you again soon.